Well, I had gone to New York from college to take 1 year at the Art Students League on the GI Bill. And I'd go to school at night, and I'd go around during the day and try to sell a strip, and comic strip, wanted to be syndicated. And I walked around and I couldn't find any work or anything. I went around to all of the big syndicates, and every one of them, I'd send in there and they'd look my work over. I'd have to come back maybe next week and pick it up or something. And every time I did, they didn't give you a pink slip. They just said, we don't need it, we don't like it, and that's it. So I tucked my tail and get out, man, and that was depressing. So I started looking around at the magazine racks and the comic books, and they had a lot of romance magazines, and I couldn't do romance. And then they had this horror bit, and I said, that might do. So I went down to EC Comics in Lower Manhattan on Canal Street, and went in and showed them my work, and they said, this is horrible, we like it. So so then from then on, they gave me a script, and I'd take that script home and pencil a drawing, and and then bring it in, and they would okay it. And I'd pick up a check on the spot. And I keep saying that, telling everybody that you didn't have to bill them or anything. You brought the work in, and they'd pick up another script, and they'd write you out a check. And that's where I started working very, very fast. Well, it was a big family, and what was so great that, you didn't have to actually go in there and work. You would take a script home with you. And when we were first married, we lived in a small apartment in Scarsdale, and I worked practically in the living room when we were first married, and then I went to a smaller room like a nursery, and you'd bring your work home. And you'd go back in maybe, and I, started doing that about once a week. So it wasn't really like punching a clock or anything. You'd call them up and tell them I'm coming in, and they'd have a script ready, and they'd pay you. And so it was great. And then they'd come in and go to lunch with some of the other artists to bring in their work in, and that was great. That's the only way I got to know them. Bill Gaines was a big, abrupt kind of guy, and in a way kind of shy. And in the beginning, I was frightened. I was afraid of him because he was the big man, and he was gruff, and he was always polite and nice, but he was very giving person. He would give bonuses. Like I said, he'd give you a check when you come in, and he'd give parties, and he'd give Christmas parties, and of all things, that was so great that he took all of the mad artists on all of these trips that I have no way that I would have ever gone there to all of these places. And we've been to South America, Dutch Guiana, been to France, and to Germany, Italy, Sicily, Northern Africa, Kenya, and all around in there. Been to Japan, been to Bangkok. We have been to Tahiti, and it was all gratis. I mean, and we'd go for a week, and it would be just the men, but eventually the wives would go along, and that kind of put a damper on things, and it wasn't as much fun. But Bill was a very generous person. Well, I was when you watch the news, and there stands Kefauver, and there still stands Bill Gaines, your publisher, and they are making fun of him and showing things maybe that I had drawn or somebody else had drawn that was bloody, or somebody firing a pistol, and that all of a sudden hit home. And I don't like to really influence some kid to do bad things or whatever. And I might be a hypocrite, but I go to church, every Sunday. I did go to church then, and I was a scoutmaster, and I had Sunday school classes. So but I didn't really realize what I was doing. Again, it's part of growing up. I was very young, and I was not wealthy, you know, and the money meant a lot, and EC was my income then. I mean, that was it, even though I didn't have a salary from them or anything like that, so I depended on that, and I just really didn't hit me, you know, and as you get older, you think a lot more, and you become a little more wiser and the whole bit, and I don't have to work for something like that anymore.
Okay, very good.
Just kind of distasteful. When all of this happened, every time, you know, an issue would come out, they'd give you about 10 issues to keep or whatever, and then when that happened, I went up and we had a fire in the winter that night, and I just sat there and I burned them. And now they're worth something, I guess. But they really weren't that bad, you know, they're not that horrible, I don't think, you know. Sometimes they do get a little gruesome, but. I'm sailing along, you know, cranking out all of the horror bit, you know, and some of it's kind of gruesome in the whole bit, and then I get a script, and I really didn't want to do it at the time, but because I was who I wasn't the boss, and everybody else is doing it, and so I did the script. I didn't write it, but I drew it, and I felt very bad about that, and of course, everybody really jumped on that because it was awful. But again, it was kind of funny, but nowadays it would be nothing. But those days, I guess it was really something that mothers and fathers say, I don't want my kid to read that. No way I'd believe it. I mean, coming to San Diego and seeing these thousands of people, that's just mind-boggling. I can't believe it. And just goes to show what you sit in your little apartment and you work and you draw and the whole bit, and meanwhile millions of people are reading it, and that's something. It's the same with the syndication today. People read the comic pages, and sometimes I don't think they realize how many people really read it. Wally Wood knocked me out, and he was influenced by Alex Raymond and Harold Foster. I mean, he could draw like them, and he was so good, and his color and his imagination and everything, it really impressed me. And then Graham Ingalls, who did The Witch and all that, his stuff, I didn't like it at the time, but as the more I went back and looked at it, the guy was an artist, and his paintings were unbelievable. You know, his oil paintings. He could have been a great illustrator. Well, along came a call from Time. They wanted me to do a cover, and it was on football. It was with Joe Namath, and so I did that cover, and I took it in, and they liked it, and first thing you knew, they called me back. But what they would do, Time, when they'd call me up and say, this is going to be the cover story, I would go into Time, and they'd give me a pad with a red border and a black type of Time on it, just like the magazine itself, but a blank page. And I'd sit there with a 2B pencil by myself in a room and sketch up ideas going along with that, and a pencil sketch, and that's some of my best work that I've ever done, really. And then an editor would pick one that he liked and give that to me, and I'd go home and do that overnight or practically the next day and bring it in on a Thursday, and I think the deadlines were Thursdays. And then come Monday, I could go to the newsstand, and there's my cover on a Monday all over the United States and the world. Unbelievable, and that was a thrill. And they paid good money, and they've kept a lot of covers. It's been in in Washington, the Smithsonian Institute, with covers and stuff. That's a thrill, and I get a big kick out of it.